Hello and welcome to Economics Unit 5, pages 1 through 2. Alright, a couple things. We're going to be skipping the following: stabilization properties and full employment. You can ask me about in class about full employment. And also cross out question number 1. Alright, first slide. Alright, the unemployment rate. Point of this video. It is the percentage of the civilian labor force that is unemployed but actively looking for work. So the bums who don't want to work, not considered part of that unemployment rate. We don't count them. Retired people, they've worked, they've earned their rest. They are not counted in the unemployment rate. So if you hear a number like 15% unemployment, 8% unemployment, that means that's the percentage of the population of people who want to work and are looking for jobs but have not been able to get hired. It does not include those, it doesn't include those who do illegal work. So maybe there's people who are working but they're doing something illegal. And I'm not just talking about legal immigrants here. Drugs, selling weapons under the table. And it could be legal citizens, but maybe they're just paying people under the table. That's underground economy. That's not part of the employment rate that we're going to be talking about working with in class. High unemployment of those actively looking for work is a sign that the economy is not doing well because it represents wasted human potential. Okay, so what is unemployment? Because unemployment and a term we're going to get into called inflation, and we've talked about in class, are very interconnected. But there's 4 kinds of unemployment. First, there's cyclical, and that's the kind of unemployment that happens with the business cycle. As we go towards a trough, into recession, jobs get lost. As we go into recovery, jobs get gained, are gained, or people find them, and then up and down. Not just the same person going up and down, but just the average employment rate. It starts to go up and down based on the business cycle. Then there's seasonal. That's jobs caused by changes in seasons or weather. Construction jobs in California could go mostly year-round. Construction jobs in Minnesota, where they have below freezing snows, don't happen all year round. So there's periods of the year where construction workers, like in the Midwest, go long periods without working because you can't go build a building in the middle of the snow when it's snowing. But farm workers, even though it's kind of year-round in California, still fairly good. There are times when there's just not much work. And again, you go towards the Midwest and the East Coast, depending on the time of year, there's no work for farm workers. Structural, caused by changes in society and technology. For example, if it looks like things are cheaper overseas for companies, and they'll move the jobs overseas. That causes employment. That's unemployment. That's structural. Type of unemployment caused by changes in society or technology. Maybe it's not that they're going to get cheap labor overseas. It's that they've replaced your job with a robot, with a machine. And now they only need a couple guys to maintain the machines as opposed to maybe 50 workers to actually build the parts or build whatever it is the machines are doing now. And then there's frictional. Frictional is a temporary unemployment between jobs. It could be layoffs, but it's that temporary period between when you are laid off or you choose to quit or you're looking for a new job, and that time in between. That kind of is frictional employment, and it's usually voluntary. Layoffs aren't voluntary. There's exceptions to that, but it's usually somewhat voluntary as opposed to the other 3 kinds. Inflation is something that we've talked about in the past, and it's only bad if it increases faster than incomes, like as a result of high unemployment. If people are out of work, their incomes are not increasing because they have no income. But if inflation keeps going up, that is when we have a problem. Inflation happening if people's incomes are going up is not a problem. Now there's 2 types of inflation. There's demand pull and cost push. Demand pull is when prices rise. I mean, that's inflation. Prices rise as the result of excessive business and consumer demand. So there's more demand and more business activity than suppliers can keep up with, and that will pull prices up. Demand is pulling inflation up. So demand is pulling inflation, pulling it up, causing it to increase. Now, causes. I touched on them just for a bit, but the Fed can cause the money supply to grow too rapidly. A lot of money out there, demand will start to increase because people have more money, but then inflation can get out of control because if there's just a lot of money being printed, that money may not be worth as much because you're just printing more of it. So then individuals, as they start to spend those additional dollars on a still limited supply of goods and services, that causes inflation. Increases in government spending can cause inflation because that causes people's incomes to increase, which means sellers are going to charge more. And again, I said that's not that bad of a thing unless those incomes aren't rising high enough, or those the increases in government spending, if they get stopped at some point, and then those people don't have jobs or they have less pay. And then finally, lower taxes and lower cost of credit, because again, if people don't have taxes, or if people don't have high taxes and they can get loans cheap, they're going to spend more, which means demand is going up. But if that outstrips people's income, like for example, people aren't they're making a lot of money, but loans are cheap. So even though they can't afford things right now, they take out a loan to buy things that they really can't afford. That can cause demand pull inflation because people are buying things even though their income can't really support it. Stagflation. This can happen as a result of demand pull inflation. It's a combination of inflation and stagnation. Stagnation means low economic activity. So that's kind of what we were just talking about. People's incomes aren't growing, or maybe they're going down, but they're trying to overcompensate or compensate for that by taking out loans and spending that money, which they don't really have the means to pay back, but still they're buying. That means demand is going up. That means the money supply will be inflated, or the money value will be inflated. That creates stagflation, and that's a really dangerous place for an economy to be in. Cost push inflation, the other type of inflation. Now, this is the theory that higher wages, we're talking about the supply curve now, push prices up. So as we raise wages, it pushes up prices, and inflation goes up. That's cost push, because the cost of making things, the cost of providing services pushes up inflation up, pushes up prices. Now, in this situation, unemployment generally won't get worse because employers are making more money, but as prices go up, so they probably won't cut people's jobs just because they're paying them more, because they're also going to charge more. But they're not going to expand their employment base. They're not going to make unemployment get better by driving it down by hiring more people, because they're afraid of hiring these newer, higher wage positions. Again, causes are kind of straightforward. Increases in the minimum wage is one, and the other is demands of labor unions. They might already be being paid more than minimum wage, but if they're trying to get more benefits, more pay, that can also cause cost push inflation, because the cost of making goods, because you have to pay people to make those goods and then sell them as a supplier, as a seller, those costs increase, so you're going to push your prices up. Cost push inflation. That's it. No Edmodo. Next, ask me in class. I'll see you in class. Thank you.